Hello, everyone. I finally got this to work, I think. We had a last minute collapse of everything. Apologies for that. We're only a minute or two behind, but we're only on Facebook. So, if obviously, if you're already on YouTube or one of the other locations that I usually stream to and you don't see me, I apologize. But the system that I use, Restream, just completely lost everything. It lost all the streams from all the sources. So we're going to have to just do Facebook today, which is fine. I can always post the replay up to the other places. But that's a shame, because this is normally something I like to put out on as many platforms as possible. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in. First, my name's Robert Whitelaw. I'm a licensed real estate broker and realtor right here in Santa Clara County, and this is something we do on the third Saturday of every month to discuss the latest numbers in real estate for Santa Clara County, San Jose, Morgan Hill, and Gilroy. And we do that so that we have a variety of different communities and sample sizes, right? So obviously the county is going to give us a great sample size. There's going to be thousands of things happening rather than dozens of things happening. So it tends to give you a little bit better information if you're looking for trends. Now, one note is next month's Coffee and Real Estate isn't going to be on the third Saturday. It's probably going to be on the fourth Saturday, simply because I'm going to be out of town on that day. So the odds of me being able to do this from where I will be is very low. So you'll see that come up on the scheduled times for the Facebook event. So feel free to join me that most likely 1 week later than usual for next month's Coffee and Real Estate. In terms of data that we've got, we can go ahead and just jump in and take a look here. Let's go ahead and just hit the numbers. Let me, since I'm only in Facebook, it's going to make chatting a whole lot easier. But I just want everyone to realize that I do see the chat. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat. I'm always happy to try and directly address questions that you might have about what's happening in the market. And just to sort of set the stage a little bit here, we definitely have some interesting things that are not normal happening this month in the marketplaces that we are going to be looking at today. So feel free to comment, ask any questions, whatever, and of course we'll try to deal with those. All right, so first we're going to look at the total homes on the market. For Santa Clara County, last year we had 2,222 homes available in the month of July. This year in July, we have 1,149. That's a 48% drop in overall inventory. And that's just the number of homes that folks had to choose from that were out there as buyers. And it's the number of homes that sellers had to compete with to get the attention of those buyers. In San Jose, we saw the number down 55%. There was 1,179 last year, 535 this year. Morgan Hill was down 25%. 92 homes last year, 69 homes this year. Gilroy, 105 homes last year, 54 homes this year, and that was a 49% decline for that community. And Gilroy is going to be an interesting outlier as we go through these numbers. Kind of a shocking outlier, actually, but we'll cover that as we go through this. Let me just adjust the screen here a little bit so it's a little easier for me to see some things. I tell you, when things go bad, they go bad. All right, so now let's go ahead and take a look at let's see, where are we? Total new listings. These are homes that were listed in the month of July. So when compared to the same time last year, again, across the board, we've got declines, but not as dramatic in some areas. So in Santa Clara County, the number of folks who decided to put their home on the market dropped by 22%. We had 1,500 homes added to the market in July of 2022. And in July of 2023, that number dropped to 1,175. And let's try to calibrate also to what the market was doing last year, right? By the time we got to July of last year, interest rates had already started to do their big increase. They weren't all the way up to like say 7% yet. We were still a couple of months away from that, a few months away, which is a number we're at again now, right? We're over 7%, and I've got the lending numbers that we can review towards the end here just to sort of calibrate you to where interest rates are. So this kind of reflects a market that we were approaching. We weren't quite to the crazy interest rates yet, but we were definitely at 5.5%, 6%, those kinds of numbers. And again, in San Jose, 28% down from the same time last year. Morgan Hill, 55 homes listed last year, 53 homes listed this year, for a 4% decline in the overall number of homes listed. In Gilroy, a 29% decrease, 66 homes last year, 47 homes this year. So interestingly enough, Gilroy and San Jose kind of had very similar percentage of declines, but also remember, when we talk about sample size, which I mentioned at the front end, you'll get more variability. You'll get more dramatic shifts when you have lower sample sizes, because simply one home can make a difference, particularly in the area of average home sale prices and list prices and that kind of stuff. It's a little bit less so here because we're dealing with just the total number of new homes listed. But just to warn you for future numbers here, that which we should be thinking. All right. Next, we're talking about homes sold. These are the total number of homes that actually sold in the month of July. Last year in Santa Clara County, we had 985 homes. This year was 872, so we're down 12%. San Jose down 7% with 464 homes sold last year, 432 homes sold this year. And Morgan Hill saw a 13% decrease with 46 homes sold last year, 40 homes sold this year. And Gilroy in July saw 37 homes sold last year, 33 homes sold this year, for an 11% decline. What's interesting here is that in every one of these cases, when you compare the total number of homes listed to the total number of homes sold, you end up with, let's just as an example. So we had new listings of 1,175 homes in San Jose, but we only sold 872. So we net added homes to inventory, right, to the tune of 303. And this is true across the board. We listed more homes than we sold. So in Santa Clara County overall, that was 303 homes added to inventory. In San Jose, that was 154 homes. In Morgan Hill, that was 13 homes. And in Gilroy, that was 14 homes. So we're adding to inventory. We're continuing to add to the total number of homes that are available for sale. And all of these numbers would tend to indicate that we're in a market where buyers should be more in the driver's seat. And what's interesting is that's not what we're seeing. Now the next number we're going to look at, total months of inventory. And this is one I've started looking at because I think it's one to keep an eye on, particularly because of the unique market we find ourselves in right now. This is the total number of homes that if you locked the inventory at what it is right now and you locked the total number of homes sold per month to what it was this month and carried that forward, this is how long it would take to sell off the total inventory of homes given today's sales number with today's inventory number. And a balanced market is considered, 4.5 to 6 months, that type of thing, 5.5 months. Here, I think it's a little lower than that, but still at 1.3, with this super low inventory, we are really right on the cusp of potentially having a super crazy seller's market. It's already a seller's market, particularly given where we are. But if there's anything that changes, and obviously the only thing that's changes is interest rates have really gone up, which should make it more of a buyer's market as the number of buyers dwindle. We can see that we would sell things off in a little over a month in most cases. In Santa Clara County, we would sell everything in 1.3 months. In San Jose, 1.2 months. In Morgan Hill, 1.7 months. And in Gilroy, 1.6 months. And all of these represent a decline from the same time last year. Right? So the same time last year, we had more homes in inventory, again, in a market that was already pretty challenged by increasing interest rates. Now, if we take a look at pending homes, these are the number of homes that accepted an offer. The reason why we're tracking this is it's a way to try to anticipate what we're going to see next month, right? Homes that sold in July probably went pending in June or late May. This is a way for us to try to anticipate where we might be going. Now, we can see compared to the same time last year, we had an 8% decrease in the county overall, 994 last year, 913 this year. San Jose, 512 last year, 462. That was a 10% decline. Morgan Hill had a 37% decline. 49 homes last year went pending, or offers were accepted on homes, and 31 this year for a 37% decline. Gilroy, we had an increase in the total number of homes that went pending, an increase in the number of homes that had an accepted offer, totally bucking the trend for the rest of the county. 29 last year, 41 this year. So that's a 41% jump in the total number of homes that sold. And this really reinforces what we've talked about in past shows. You know, whether you're someone who listens to the podcast and we've talked about it there, or you just have taken in past Coffee and Real Estates. This is sort of the trend I've been mentioning now for quite a while, where Gilroy seems to be where a lot of tension is going. I hope you brought your real estate to Coffee and Real Estate today. This is a new coffee, and I'm actually excited enough about this one to share with you what it's called and where I got it. So I'll give that one to you in a little bit. But Gilroy is really tending to buck trends as it relates to the overall real estate market in terms of the amount of demand and what folks are doing. Let's see here. The next number we're going to go ahead and look at is average original sales price. And I use original sales price because it's a way for us to sort of figure out where sellers' heads are at, right? This is the number that they put on the listing agreement when it was first signed with their real estate agent. So when this first got entered in the MLS on that very first day, this was the asking price they were calibrated to. This is what they thought they should be able to get for their home. And it's really a way to measure expectations, right? And understanding that is important, particularly if you're a buyer who's trying to make an offer that might be able to make some headway to get past some of these expectations that sellers have. Now, in Santa Clara County overall, we had a 3% increase. So when compared to the same time last year, on average, sellers were expecting 3% more for their homes than they were a year ago. That number went to $1,851,745 this year. Last year, that number was $1,796,990. In San Jose, it was a 3.3% drop, which is also interesting to note. Because it's the only community where we saw a decrease in expectations on average. And the sample size in San Jose is large enough that this would, in most ways, be a super accurate number for us to consider. Not as reliable as a countywide number. But it's interesting that San Jose seems like the most calibrated to the market if we just take this average number at face value. Last year, the average original list price was $1,427,000. This year, it's $1,380,000. So, and that makes sense. I mean, given the realities of the market, but we're going to look some numbers in a minute that actually make that seem not so much the case. But it really depends on where your home is located in San Jose or in the county. And we'll talk about that in a little bit because it gets more complicated as we go through this. Now, in Morgan Hill, 6.7% increase in the same time last year. Last year was $1,397,000. Really, just about a $100,000 increase from last year to $1,491,000. Gilroy, $1,194,000 up to by 6.1% up to $1,266,000. And this is why we're seeing a dramatic jump in what is selling, homes sold in Gilroy compared to other communities. If you're someone who is currently shopping for a home and you don't want to adjust the quality that you're looking at in terms, or the number of bedrooms and baths, the amenities that you're looking for, and to accommodate for rising interest rates, you just adjust your price, you are naturally going to be drawn to a community like Gilroy, which is $200,000 cheaper, $200,000 cheaper and more than communities like Morgan Hill. So, and we're going to look at something else here that's kind of interesting in terms of what markets are the hottest. And it'll be a great way for you to get some insights into the new tool that I'm providing for my buyers that comes from HomeBot AI, which is really a great way. It's a new and much more dynamic way to really evaluate markets. So feel free to take advantage of that if you'd like. But this is what's doing it. It's these lower prices that are driving the attention of home buyers to Gilroy. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at average sales price. Santa Clara County had a 0% change. Same on average, homes are selling for the same that they did last year. So if you take a look at original list price, where expectations were 3% higher, they really should not have been any higher at all. They should have been really at 0. And if we look at what these average sales prices are, it's $1,771,000 versus the expectation on average of $1,851,000, right? If we want to sort of factor in how much less is that than what expectations were, in San Jose, that's about $80,000 below expectations from sellers. San Jose was up 7.4%. So last year, homes were selling on average for 1,343,000. This year, 1,442,000. So the amount of expectations in terms of San Jose having lower expectations, that's a good thing because the average list price is below the average sales price, which is 1,442,000, where it was last year 1,343,000. Morgan Hill down 21.2%. This number is a little out of whack because there was a home at a particularly high price point that sold last year at this time. But right now we're at 1,296,000, which is 194,000 off from expectations. If we look at what folks were expecting a 6.7% boost, but and their average original list price was 1,491,000, and it was 1,296,000 was the average purchase price. So the difference between expectations and the reality of what on average was selling was $194,000 in Morgan Hill. So even though we do have this wide fluctuation here, it does indicate that expectations for Morgan Hill are out of whack on average. In Gilroy, we see the number this year is 1,203,000. Last year was 1,149,000. That's a 4.8% increase. So note that, like San Jose, Gilroy has had an average sales price increase. And again, this is a reflection of folks that had higher price point parameters who were shopping in, say, a Morgan Hill or a South San Jose, have now moved to Gilroy to still get the quality home that they wanted. They wanted to adjust the price they were paying versus the qualities they were looking for in the homes they were shopping for. Next, and also the difference between expectations and what was happening in Gilroy. If we want to go back to that. Did I go back too far? Yeah, that's average original list price. I didn't want to go there. If we see average sales price, 1,203,000. That is $62,000 below expectations when compared to original list price. So despite the increase, expectations were still higher than what the market was delivering on average in Gilroy. Next. Now, if you've got any questions, feel free to poke them right in there into the Facebook Live page, the Facebook Live chat. Now we're going to look at percent of asking price. And this is going to be an interesting one, and particularly when we look back over our shoulders. This is obviously year-over-year comparisons, as has been everything we've looked at so far. But in every market, when compared to the same time last year, on average, homes are selling for more than the asking price. And if the number was 100% across the board, that would mean that every home was selling for asking price. So if we look at Santa Clara County, it's up 3.5% from the same time last year, giving us, on average, homes selling for 4.9% over asking price. In San Jose, it's up 4.3%. Average homes in San Jose selling for 5.7% over asking price. Morgan Hill, average homes are selling for 1.7% over asking price. That's a 2% increase. And Gilroy is selling at 2.2% over asking price, which is a net 0.5% increase from the same time last year. These numbers are kind of nuts. We would expect them to go down. I actually expected these to go down this month. I think that's what I projected when we talked last month. But sometime between now and the end of this year, we will see this number go down. It's just the way the markets always work. If we don't, I'm not sure what to expect. The other reality is that with interest rates now over 7%, and that the likelihood of this pushing down the number of buyers, it may end up resulting in a drop in this number as well in terms of what folks are willing to pay over asking price. Next, let's take a look at the total number of days on market, and this is a shocker. This is probably one of the biggest shocks of this market analysis, is that we've actually seen the total number of days drop Total days on market has been increasing for months and months and months, and I would have expected it to go up when compared to the same time last month, and we'll see how that pans out when we look over our shoulder. But compared to last year, the total number of days it's taking to get homes sold um, is down 14% in the county overall. It's taking 18 days to get things sold on average in Santa Clara County compared to last year's 21. San Jose, 20 last year, 17 this year for a 15% decrease. Morgan Hill, 35 days last year, 25 days this year. That's a 29% drop. And Gilroy, 19 days last year, 16 days this year. That's a 16% drop from the same time last year. So across the board, when compared to the same time last year, everything is selling faster. When you look at the lay of the land and realize that interest rates right now are, and when offers were being accepted last month in June, what interest rates were? They were higher or on par with what they were a year ago. So to see this when compared to the same time last year be lower is pretty amazing. And it definitely bucks the trend. We would normally expect things to start being, and remember, when we talk about days on market, this relates to solds, total number of homes sold. So these are homes where the offer was accepted not in July but in June. So it's based slightly on some older information, but still kind of a shocker. Now let's take a look at, I believe this is going to be just overall. Yeah, so total active listings compared to new listings compared to homes sold over time. The first one we're going to look at is total number of active listings. Now you can see that month to month they've sort of creeped up, but if you look at last year, right, we had this big bulge in, starting in April, May, June, July, and August. We're not seeing that. Right, we're in terms of total number of active listings, we're seeing a steady increase since February, but we don't see this dramatic increase that we saw last year. Now, remember, in March is when interest rates started to make their jump last year, so I think that's one thing that really started to negatively affect it as we went through. But what's interesting is how flat this number is, particularly since it's really been flat since December. With just a steady increase with a bit of a drop in February. Now let's go ahead and add new listings. This is an interesting number to look at because of the drop, right? We had a peak in May, which is not unexpected. If we look at May of last year, we can see that's not where the peak was. The peak was in March. But again, remember that March was when interest rates started to take a dramatic increase, and there's a likelihood to expect that would have also suppressed listing of homes, as folks who are sellers typically are also buyers and don't want to deal with trading their 2.5% or 3% mortgage for a 6.5% or a 7% mortgage. But if we look at even June of the year before, May, June of 2021, we can see things were relatively flat. We had a peak in April, and then May and June were relatively good with a bit of a drop in July, and then it sort of just made its dramatic drop until we hit wintertime. Not seeing the dramatic numbers here, but I would expect to see from here fewer listings as we go through the rest of the year. Just from a seasonal standpoint, regardless of what other things are going on, we just usually start to see, starting in July and August, we start to see a decline in the number of homes that are being listed as the hot season of the year tends to come to a close. But we'll see how that plays out. If we look at the total number of homes sold, look at that dramatic drop between June and July. If you look between June and July last year, very flat. June and July the year before, hold on, I got turned around here. June and July, yes, very flat. June of July of 2021, a decrease as well. So if we kind of look at this from the standpoint of what tends to happen seasonally, it's expected to see the total number of homes sold drop, but that's a pretty dramatic drop. I think from a seasonal standpoint, it drops much more dramatically, and obviously a lot of that's going to be linked to what interest rates are doing. But it definitely shows a trend that I think is likely going to continue until the end of the year. Next, let's go ahead and look at the total number of pending homes. We can see pending homes actually sort of veered away from a decline between May and June, but still saw a decline. So since we saw the decline that's reflected here, right? So this decline from here to here is directly reflected in the decline in total number of homes sold, right? Because if this yellow line is pending or accepted offers, it makes sense that when we saw this drop into June, that we would see that reflected in the total number of homes sold in July. Since we see a continuing decline in pending homes, My expectation is that from here, this number goes down, right? Next month for total number of homes sold. So the prediction is a drop in total number of homes sold in August. Santa Clara County list versus sales price. We can see that the average list price is the light green, and we can see whenever they move away from each other like that, they almost met each other in June in terms of average list price versus average sales price. But average sales price has now sort of vectored away from list price, meaning expectations on the part of sellers are no longer connected correctly with what the market is willing to bear. My expectation would be that the average sales price would continue to either be flat or go down. If we look at past years, what happens from June and July moving forward. If we look at what happens from June and July going forward, if we look at June and July last year, we can see that average sales prices dropped in July to August and then sort of peaked a little bit in September, October, and then went down more. If we look at the year before, we can see that July was relatively flat all the way through till December, where it ticked up a little bit and then went down again. My expectations would be that we would see continuing relatively flat with maybe trending down a little bit. So I don't expect to see any dramatic increases in prices. All right, percent of asking price. And we already have sort of realized how high this one is. It's definitely not the peaks that we've seen in recent years, but it is definitely an uptick from last year where we saw the dramatic craziness of March of 2022 peak at 115.3% or 15.3% above asking price. With once those interest rates kicked in, steady decline as interest rates went up until interest rates sort of peaked in the late part of the year, right around when we start to drop below 100% at 99.9 for the county. And I'll be honest, I would not have expected, if we take a look at past years, June, July, relatively flat. I guess we could call what we've got now relatively flat. But if we look at past years, we would expect to see a drop in August, with then maybe an increase in October leading into the rest of the year. But remember, we had a much more robust market in 2021. So my expectation would be that we see this drop and either continue to drop or stabilize at something very close to list price. But again, interest rates are at a crazy place and at make further suppress what we're going to see in terms of activity on the part of buyers, which would, for those sellers who have to sell, they're going to have to adjust their prices in order to accommodate what folks are willing to pay in the market. All right, Santa Clara County days on market. We can kind of see where we've been and where we are. We see that here in July, we had a little bit of an increase compared to June. If we look at June and July of last year, really dramatic increase between June and July of last year that we just didn't see this year. Relatively flat in 2021. Given the time of year, we would normally expect to see relatively flat performance. This is when we start to see all those homes that accepted offers in June, closing in July. The market is starting to wrap up and sort of, instead of being the hottest part of the year, we're sort of easing into that downhill side of 2023. So my estimation would be that from here, we should start to see days on market increase a bit, like we did in 2021. Just sort of a gradual increase that is typical as we head into winter, where it peaks in December and then starts to drop in January of 2024. Next, let's take a look at the total number of homes that have had price reductions. Santa Clara County last month, 22% of homes had a price reduction. This month, 19%. Compared to the same time last year, that's a 74% drop in the percentage of homes that had a price reduction. In San Jose last month, it was 20%, really on par this month with 19%, which is a 77% drop from the same time last year. Morgan Hill, 32% last month, 29%. So we had fewer homes with a price reduction in July than we did in June. 53% drop overall from the same time last year. Gilroy, 25% drop last month. 25% of inventory had a price reduction. 26% this month. 62% drop overall. And I think the reason why we see this increase in Gilroy is just an adjustment to get things going. I think folks likely are seeing that the market is the hot part of the market is wrapping up, and I think a lot of sellers out there want to try to take advantage of that. All right, that pretty much covers the market analysis numbers part. If you've got any questions or comments, feel free to share those with me in the chat. I'd love to hear from you. Next, we're going to go into sort of the news and also some other items, but I wanted to introduce you to a search tool that I'm pretty enthusiastic about. This is from HomeBot AI, and let me go to a different screen so I'm not, let's just go with the browser. You don't need to see my ugly face. This is the tool I've talked about, and it's going to sound a little odd, but this is almost kind of hidden. You can't get access to this tool just by visiting my website. You get access to a search tool, but this is a little different. Using this tool, you don't really set up a search that will automatically alert you, and the search that I have for you to use at my website that you get to is that kind of thing. You tell it what you're looking for, and it'll email you as properties become available. I've also got another tool called the Stream that will actually text you and let you know all kinds of things about what's going on with homes you're interested in. But I wanted to focus on this one because it really gives you some interesting tools that aren't normal or aren't provided by an awful lot of places. And this is a way to look at the markets, to explore the markets, and see where things are hot and where things are not. And you can see, obviously way down blue is going to be a buyer's market. If it's way down here at blue, you see little competition and high inventory, meaning you have great negotiating power. Anything from 81 to 100 is some fierce competition with low inventory. And the reason why I wanted to show this to you today is to notice the interesting changes that we've seen. So Morgan Hill is at 92, but check out Morgan Hill. I mean, I'm sorry, San Martin, Morgan Hill, and this is 95037. This is really more San Martin. So Morgan Hill, the 95037 zip code of Morgan Hill is up there at 92. San Martin is down at 62, and Gilroy is down at 89. So a little bit less competition, but still considered a strong seller's market. And then if you look at Los Paseos, Avenida España, California Mason, Chantilly, Burning Tree in South San Jose, not so much. It's a little bit less competition, but the sellers still have the advantage. But I thought this was a super interesting way to sort of get a feel for the markets. Now, obviously, if you zoom out too far, that data goes away. But it's a great way at a distance to really figure out where the best buyer markets are. So right here, Mount Hermon is obviously indicating it's a much more of a seller's market or buyer's market. Freedom is indicating it's much more of a buyer's market. Castroville. So all of these are out here to sort of give you that 10,000 foot view of what's going on with these various markets. What's also interesting is, let's say you wanted to get a bigger house, right? This is a tool that lets you look at what the average square footage is in these various areas. The average square footage in San Martin at 95046, 1,600 square feet. In Morgan Hill, 2,000 square feet. In Gilroy, 2,600 square feet. So it's just a great, cheaper buys, right? So if you wanted to downsize, you could give this the information it needs. You could tell it about your home and what it's costing you, and then it would show you areas where you could get a better deal based on the information it knows about you. And then this is about fastest move, right? How long it takes to get things sold. And just an interesting way to look at this and sort of process what's going on in the markets. Of course, you can do a search for a home. I haven't really fooled around too much with a buying report, but this is one way to go through. You can explore other areas. How long does it take to buy? To calibrate you to that. How much? Let's see. What is it? If you rented your future home on Airbnb, how much could you potentially earn? I mean, these are some great tools that just aren't normal, right? They aren't part of the mainstream of what folks are usually accessing. And then, of course, there's the standard search where you can start with, say, San Jose, and see what all's available and do all the usual things, right? You can filter by I want at least 3 beds. I want at least 2 baths. I only want a house, square footage, all that kind of stuff. And then you'll get those showing up. And you can zoom in and obviously see more precise indicators of what's out there with the photos on the side, this is all very conventional. This is all stuff that you're very much used to. But the one interesting thing is this won't email you. You can continue to look at things through this, but you need to go back and visit it on your own. And you can just check new listings since the last time you were there. You can sort them by lowest price, smallest square footage, that type of thing. But just an interesting way, I think, while this is very conventional, you can go through here and do some pretty interesting stuff as it relates to just exploring the market. So I thought I would share that one with you because I think it's kind of a cool tool. All right. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the next thing. I wanted to take a minute to talk about mortgage delinquencies. There's been a lot of talk about a crash in the market, right? A downturn in the marketplace. But mortgage delinquencies are now down to the lowest they've ever been. So if there's anything to look for optimism in terms of how good the real estate market is for folks, and for the vast majority of folks in our local market, you really don't have any worries in terms of equity. You have a whole lot of equity in your home. People are continuing to get more than asking price. We haven't seen dramatic drops in prices. We've seen year over year drops in average sales prices in some areas, but not dramatic. Nothing that I think is going to push for an economic disaster in the world of real estate. Some things I wanted to point out here. 3.3% of all loans outstanding at the end of the second quarter of 2023. Delinquency rate for mortgage loans on 1 to 4 unit residential properties decreased to a seasonally adjusted rate of 3.37%. The percentage of loans on which foreclosure actions were started in the second quarter fell by 3 basis points to 0.13%. And, quote, the seasonally adjusted mortgage delinquency rate fell to its lowest level since MBA's survey began in 1979. One thing that was added, despite low delinquency rates, there are early signs of possible consumer credit stress. And I wanted to mention this one because in my last podcast, which I believe went out Friday, I kind of alluded to this, right? I talked about the debt profile of people because oftentimes it's not just what's happening with your house, although obviously your house is super influential. It's usually your most valuable asset. There's also other things that play into your debt profile that could move you towards making decisions that cause more recessionary things to happen, right? And this one points out credit stress. Delinquencies are rising for other forms of credit, such as credit cards and car loans. And what I was specifically calling out on Friday was car loans. There are more requests for repossessions of cars than there are tow trucks and repossession folks to do the work. So there's definitely a credit stressor happening out there. And it's another topic we covered when we were talking about how people's indebtedness is being handled or how it's growing, where people on average are spending over $1,000 a month on their car payment. They're putting, and it's the subprime lending situation in the car loan industry right now is crazy. So I've been trying to anticipate what effect might that have on the world of real estate, right? It would obviously affect the credit ratings of folks who might want to become home buyers at some point. But are there other more deep things? Would they start making decisions relating to that indebtedness that would negatively affect their willingness to pay their mortgage, right? You would think that the mortgage would probably be one of the last things they'd want to stop paying. But it's up in the air, right? In addition, FHA delinquencies rose 10 basis points compared to a year ago. On a non-seasonally adjusted basis, FHA delinquencies, Federal Housing Authority, rose 13 basis points year over year and 71 basis points from the first quarter of 2023. As the economy slows and labor market cools, homeowners with FHA loans are likely to feel the distress first. So I thought that was an interesting one to pull out. Year over year measures of inflation, services, and goods. I thought this would be a good one to see because it's good news, right? Overall, inflation is down when it comes to services, less rent and shelter, right? So if you look at the red one, that's minus rent. If we look at the next one, which is durables, right? And that's also down in terms of inflation. But here's the kicker. This one is housing and shelter. Look at where we are, going back all the way to 2001. A little bit of a decline as a national number, but not anything like what we've seen in these other areas. So, this continues to be, and with this being the only outlier of something that's remained ridiculously expensive, when you see things like this, when you see a chart with that kind of crazy growth, your natural instinct, I think, is to expect that something is going to happen that brings that number down. So we'll have to see. Now, the BLS noted this morning, Bureau of Labor Statistics, the index for shelter was by far the largest contributor to the monthly all items increase, accounting for over 90% of the increase. So 90% of the cost of living increase was in housing. And I just don't, how do you sustain that, right? Something has got to give in that segment of the market. Next, some local news. For those of you who saw the smoke, we had a highway fire right next to the 101 in North Morgan Hill. I think the wind, I couldn't see it from where I live, but I live in East Morgan Hill, kind of at the end of Dunn. So just thought I'd point that one out for those of you who might have missed it or not seen it in your commute. And this is today's coffee. So for those of you, and I don't make any money off of this one, but if you're interested, this is probably one of the best ones I've tried, and I like to try a different one every time. And that's what's in here right now. The Army of Dark Chocolate is what this one's called, from Bones Coffee Company. So I thought I'd share this one with you to see if it was something you might be interested in checking out. This is another interesting. State of California must end its home equity theft loophole. And I'm bringing this one up because for those of you who check out my podcast, you know that I did an interview with a lawyer from the Pacific Legal Foundation. And they are the ones who won this court in front of the Supreme Court relating to equity theft, meaning, let's say you owe the state, the county, the city, whatever, money, and they are going to auction off your home to pay that indebtedness. Assuming you own your home outright, if your home sells for $100,000 and you only owe them $5,000, well, then you should get a check for $95,000, right? No. What was happening was the state was keeping the entire amount. So they were keeping $100,000 for a debt of $5,000. That's obviously a dramatic example, but that's the basic math. We have this same problem in California. There's still a law in the books, and according to this article, there's still a law in the books allowing home equity theft in certain circumstances. Foreclosed houses are supposed to be sold at public auction, and anything left after taxes are paid is returned to the former owner. But if the government wants the house for public use, or if a nonprofit wants to turn it into low-income housing, the government can bypass the auction, pay the tax debt, and take the property, leaving the original owner with nothing. And on its face, this is one of those things that I can't believe exists. Simply because it shouldn't, right? I think we can all agree that that this shouldn't be allowed to happen. One quote from the court case, and again, if you want a great interview with the lawyer who argued this case in front of the Supreme Court, check out my podcast. You can go, the audio only obviously is right there in the podcast menu. If you go to soldbyrobert.com and you click on the podcast, or you go to therebelbroker.com, you can see a list of all my past podcasts. Or if you want to go to the YouTube channel, you can check it out, and there's a video of that interview with that lawyer from Pacific Legal Foundation. But I love Pacific Legal Foundation, one of my favorite organizations. They're always out there fighting for your property rights. Let's see. The Chief Justice, John Roberts, said in his opinion for the court, quote, "A taxpayer who loses her $40,000 house to the state to fulfill a $15,000 tax debt has made a far greater contribution to the public than she owed. The taxpayer must render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but no more." So just to bring it home, right, this court case that went in front of the Supreme Court was obviously in another state, in Hennepin County, and I'm not sure where that is. I forget which state that was in. But there is a version of it right here in California that I think we all need to be aware of. Next on the hit parade, lumber prices down 29%. That indicates low demand, right? Which indicates not as much construction as we would potentially like. However, housing starts are up, but most of it's multifamily. We're not seeing nearly enough in single family development. And sadly, most of this is apartment style building. So it's not duplexes, triplexes, quads that feel more like a regular home. These are all apartments. And I actually don't think that's healthy for the market. I think what we need to do is we need to build more single-family residentials. New construction picks up 3.9%. So yes, that's true, but again, not as much as we would like. Housing weekly trends. I just wanted to sort of go with the key findings here. The median, just to sort of compare our local markets, we've already sort of reviewed our local markets. Median listing price grew by 0.2%. So we actually had, in most areas, much more than that, right? When the county overall, we had a 3% increase in the overall expectations for listing prices. New listings, a measure of sellers putting homes on the market, was up by 8.1%. In terms of us, new listings was down 22%. So nationally, we have far fewer homes getting listed than nationally. Active inventory declined by 8.6%. We saw active inventory decline by 48%. Or wait, hold on. Is this a year over year or month to month? I hate when they use month to month numbers. No, prior year. Okay. Homes spent 6 extra days on the market compared to the same time last year. For us, it was less. We had fewer days on market. Next, this was one that was just sort of a passing interest in terms of where do you want to look? If you're someone who's considering selling your home and you want to make improvements, what are the biggest payoffs? And as has always been true, the things that tend to sell your home are kitchens and bathrooms. If your kitchens and bathrooms look great, those are what folks are going to remember. But those are also two of the most expensive places to do a lot of work. So one other area is flooring updates. This is absolutely true, particularly and usually only if you currently have challenging floors. If you have really bad carpeting that's very worn and weathered and frankly dirty, you're going to want to replace that. Painting is another great way to go that is relatively inexpensive. And then lighting upgrades, right? If you have a lot of really old lighting fixtures, particularly prominent ones in the home, it's a good idea to update those. Usually the payoff is just leaving the right impression with folks who are going to come and view your home. Next, let's go ahead and take a look at mortgage rates. This is not great news, right? If you look at that, you can see that in terms of the range that we're at, we are at the 52-week high. We are at the 1-year high. We are at 7.37 for a 30-year fixed rate loan, 6.76% for a 15-year fixed, 30-year jumbo. I mean, these numbers are just crazy. Expectations are that these are likely going to go down by the end of 2024. That wouldn't surprise me. I don't think they'll go down as much as was originally expected. The expectation was that we would hit a pretty bad recession. There are still folks out there anticipating a recession, but given what we're seeing, I'm not real sure that that's going to manifest. So we may not see interest rates drop because remember, you raise interest rates to fight inflation, you reduce interest rates to fight recession. And right now, inflation remains strongest overall, but it is declining as long as you exclude housing. And of course, we all have housing, right? So it's not like we can ignore the inflated costs of housing for us. All right, that is about it. That's the rundown. That's the Magic Realtor dashboard there. But just to show you where you can go if you would like to get access to your free home property value, you can do that right here on my website at soldbyrobert.com. Just enter your address right here. And it's an instant thing. It's going to give you that information right away. If you would like to, you can also provide your email, and then you'll get access to all kinds of great tools that will tell you all kinds of different things. Well, I could just show you. Let's just pick any house. In Beaver Dam. So what it'll do is give you an estimated value of your home. It'll tell you when you provide it with your mortgage information, it'll give you what you've paid so far. If you paid X amount more, how much would you save? Can you save money by refinancing, whether a 30-year and 15-year? And this uses real numbers, real lending numbers. If you bought another home, how much could you afford? Knowing the numbers from above, it'll give you all this: rent or your home, buy another, purchase a new home, buy an investment. In terms of giving you options, your house has built X amount of equity, and it would know this number, obviously, if you input your loan information. Do you want to make home improvements, add more livable space, pay down a student loan, eliminate credit card debt? All these things are options for you. And again, they give you links to the solution. It's not just a suggestion. It actually gives you numbers on it. And this would give you the ability, once you have the full address and all the other information, it allows you to get a rundown on how much you could rent the home for, both short-term and long-term. It lets you use numbers all the way from daily rentals to monthly rentals. So lots of cool tools here for you if you wanted to get all of the free report information. And again, you just have to provide your email address here to get that. And of course, if you want to start your home search, you can do that right here. If you want to get access to the buyer's tool or the market research tool that I showed you earlier in the show, you're not going to be able to get access to it right here, but everyone who I talk to, all of my buyers who are out there actively looking, I give them a link to that so that they can use that as another tool in addition to this daily update tool, because doing this search will give you an update every single time via email every single time. And I have another tool that'll even do emails and texts. So the market research tool is just a great way to do that 10,000 foot view and really sort of drill down on those communities for you to just have an extra tool in your toolbox. All right. That's about it, folks. It's a busy Saturday for me, so I know I've kind of rushed through this last part, but I've got a lot of things to get done today, a lot of homes to see with some people. Hopefully this has been good information for you and you've enjoyed your time with a cup of coffee and me discussing our local real estate market. If you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can contact me at the website, soldbyrobert.com. But as always, the goal is to leave you with more information on the table and I take up in your time. Absolutely hope we've achieved that today. Thanks for joining me for this week's Coffee and Real Estate. I look forward to seeing you next month.